Hades 360 is Gravity Group's original wooden roller coaster creation at Mount Olympus in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin. Most known for its 800-foot-long underground tunnel, Hades 360 has sparked some controversy in the roller coaster community for being one of the roughest wooden roller coasters ever built. Today, I'll be giving you my full thoughts and review and let you know where Hades stands in this polarizing debate. Let's get into it. First thing about Hades 360 is that it wasn't always Hades 360. From 2005 to 2012, Hades had a big airtime hill in the island of the parking lot. However, in 2013, Mount Olympus replaced that hill with a corkscrew and a 110-degree overbank turn. Additionally, they added heavier Timberliner trains to replace the older PCC ones. If you want a more in-depth history on Hades, make sure you check out Zero Credits Remaining's video, but for now, I'm just going to get into the review. Hades 360 has one of the most unique layouts of any roller coaster, especially considering the 17-second pre-lift section. To begin the ride, riders dive down into an airtime-filled drop straight out of the station, followed by a transition into the next airtime-filled element, a double down. Next, riders turn right into a twisted ejector airtime hill and turn left into the lift hill. After cresting over the elevated 160-foot-tall lift hill, riders plunge into complete darkness into the underworld where they will experience a quick series of airtime hops and sharp turns. Transitioning out of the tunnel, riders step up into a small ejector airtime hill and fly into Hades' one and only inversion, a corkscrew. Maintaining its breakneck speed, Hades swoops into a swift 110-degree overbank curve and rises into another airtime hill before plummeting back into the abyss of the pitch-black tunnel. Repeating with quick pops of airtime and turns in the tunnel, riders emerge into the light for their next element, an oddly shaped double down. Passing under the station, riders speed into a drawn-out right-hand turn with a couple small hills and conclude the ride by traversing an uphill left-hand turn into the brake run. Because of how many amazing airtime moments there are on this ride, I've got to rank them one by one to give you an idea of which ones are best. Starting off, the drop out of the station may be the most insane moment of ejector on the ride if you are riding in the back row. The Timberliner train is so long that most of the train is halfway down the drop when the back row crests the hill, allowing riders to get absolutely yanked out of their seats. The double down is also a great airtime moment. The first hill gives a bit of floater and is one of the weaker moments of airtime, but the second hill makes up for it with a stronger pop of airtime, but it's still not too noteworthy. However, the twisted ejector hill is definitely a top 3 moment of airtime on Hades. Not only are you launched out of your seat, but you swing from right to left while you are in the air, making for such a fun and chaotic moment of airtime. By the time the ride starts up the lift, you've already had some of the best moments of airtime on the ride. Surprisingly, the main drop on Hades is only the 5th best moment of airtime. I'd say you get some great floater, but it's nothing that's going to take your breath away. And there's no distinct airtime moment in the tunnel, but the step up coming out of the tunnel is awesome. You're only out of your seat for maybe second, but it's pretty powerful, and it ranks as the 4th best moment of airtime on the ride, just ahead of the main drop. After the turn is where I think the drop out of the station meets its rival for the best moment of airtime on Hades, the sustained ejector hill. This hill is just like the step up, but if it was 3 times longer. You start lifting up from out of your seat until you get thrown back down into the tunnel, all while under the columns and architecture around you. I go back and forth if either this hill or the station drop is the best airtime moment, but regardless, you should look forward to both of them. The remaining airtime hills for the rest of the course are worse compared to the others. The second double down is decent, and the quick pops in the finale don't deliver as the coaster loses speed going uphill. Now it's time to address what I glossed over in the layout, the elements in the tunnel. If you want to see what they are, you can check out a lights on POV for Hades. But to be completely frank, I don't think it matters if you know, because you will not be able to see anything in the tunnel. You couldn't be in more complete darkness, and Hades just yanks you around in every direction until it lets you see again. It's hard for me to describe what it's like going so fast without being able to see where you're going. It's so chaotic, but equally thrilling, a fitting theme repeated throughout the ride. I will say that the return trip in the tunnel is less intense than the first. The turns in the airtime are milder, but something different on the return trip is this small outer bank turn right before you exit the tunnel. If you've done some of the RMC pre-lift outer banks like Twisted Cyclone, it feels pretty similar to that. Something else that I skipped over that I'm coming back to now for emphasis is the corkscrew. This is one of my favorite corkscrews of all time. It's glossy smooth and allows for some hang time as you curl through the top of it. But riders beware. Watch out for this wooden post exiting the corkscrew. If you try to hit it, you will, and it definitely won't feel good. Make sure to put your hands down for this moment, like Hades' entrance sign recommends. The high-speed overbank following it is another cool moment. It's definitely an improvement from the slow airtime hill that was there before the renovation. Now it's time to talk about the pacing. Hades is relentless for 90% of its layout. Two notable dead spots where it loses its speed are the second double down and the last 5 seconds of the layout. The double down is just a high point on the ride that the train travels over slowly, but right after you traverse down the hill, you regain all of your momentum. And the final 5 seconds are just considerably slower than the rest of the ride, as Hades needs to climb back up to its elevated station. Therefore, the final uphill turn is just pretty boring. Despite these two dead spots, Hades feels like one of the most fastest paced rides I've ever been on. The main issue I have with Hades is its sequencing, or its balance of good elements on the ride. Like I mentioned earlier, two of the best airtime moments are before the lift hill, and there's nothing exciting after the second double down. With this, I feel like the layout is very front heavy, where the last fourth of the ride has nothing significant to add to Hades. In a perfect world, I wish I could Roller Coaster Tycoon Hades to rearrange its elements so that they would be spread out more equal throughout its layout, but it's still really nitpicky of me, and it's not really that big of an issue. Finally, what you've all been waiting for me to talk about, the roughness. Hades is super rough. It feels like it's running on square wheels. And this is throughout the whole entire ride as well. It's not just one specific part, it's the whole entire ride. Hades, although extremely fun, has headache-inducing roughness. As an experienced roller coaster rider who's built up a tolerance for roughness over the years, the most I can do in one day on my 2 visits to Mount Olympus was 3. So, this feels like a perfect time for me to introduce you to the Fun Pain Scale. The Fun Pain Scale is an official Coaster Squabble measuring chart to decide if a roller coaster is enjoyable or not. On the x-axis is how fun the ride is, and on the y-axis is how painful the ride is. On the graph, there is a red line that divides the graph into 2 sections, the good coasters and the bad ones. The bad coasters are the ones that are more painful than fun. These would be extremely rough coasters with no redeeming qualities, like the Boss at Six Flags St. Louis. Sorry, Boss fans. The good coasters are the ones that are more fun than painful. For example, Raptor at Cedar Point has an awkward final turn that may feel bad on your neck, but the other 95% of its layout is pure fun. With this, Hades is at the very, very top of the Fun Pain Scale. Its elements make it a top 10 coaster for me, but if it were any more rough, I would have to put it way lower. The back row is a lot more thrilling, but a bit more rough, and the front row is less thrilling and less rough. Either way, they stay on the threshold of being a good coaster versus a bad coaster. The retrains and the restraints make this coaster bearable. They are padded and open air, so you won't go crashing into anything. As I said from the start, some love this coaster and some hate it. After my very first ride in the front row with my family, my older brother and I absolutely loved it. We thought it was amazing. But my dad and my twin brother thought it was horrible from the second row. I thought they were joking, but I guess they didn't have the tolerance to roughness like my older brother and I did, which is definitely understandable. With all of my thoughts about Hades laid out for y'all at this point, it's time to give it a final score. And today, I am giving it a 10 out of 10. Despite its flaws like its roughness and its not so good sequencing, it is my favorite wooden coaster so far, beating out notable ones like El Toro, Rampage, and Shivering Timbers. Now, the only thing that would make this way higher in my top 10 would just be clear out the roughness. If it were a smooth coaster and definitely more bearable and more rideable, I'd enjoy this coaster a lot more, and it would have a better score on the Fun Pain Scale. But even though Hades is running on square wheels, I feel like it does give it a lot of personality for just being an out-of-control and chaotic coaster. Thank you all so much for tuning in to my Hades 360 review. Make sure to post your thoughts down in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe to Coaster Squabble. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.